March 2026, 2:47 a.m. over the Persian Gulf. A single American stealth bomber cuts through the night sky. Below it, the lights of Iranian oil refineries glow like dying embers. 1 minute later, the sky lights up with fire. Explosions rip through the darkness. Billions of dollars worth of infrastructure vanish in seconds. That single night marked the beginning of a war no one wanted to call a war. Within weeks, the cost crossed $200 billion. Not in some distant future, not in estimates. In real money already spent. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is the $200 billion Iran versus US war of 2026. Welcome to Crayon Econ. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this conflict escalated, what it has already cost the world, who is paying the price, and why this war may reshape the global economy for the next decade. No hype, no exaggeration, only the facts. And those facts are more shocking than any headline you've read. Let's begin. The roots of this war go back further than most people realize. For years, tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States had been simmering. Proxy battles in Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen had become routine. But everything changed in late 2025 when Iran accelerated its nuclear program and began openly threatening the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. On February 28, 2026, the situation exploded. Israeli and American forces launched a coordinated series of precision strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, missile bases, and key oil infrastructure. What was supposed to be a limited operation turned into a full-scale regional conflict within days. By mid-March, the Pentagon had already requested an emergency supplemental budget of over $200 billion. From Congress, that single request made one thing crystal clear. This was no longer a limited strike. This had become a real war with real, massive financial consequences. But before we go into the numbers, you need to understand something disturbing. This war is not just expensive. It's becoming profitable for some people. And that changes everything. Let's talk numbers. Cold, hard, and verified. According to official Pentagon briefings to Congress in March 2026, the first 6 days of major operations alone cost the United States more than $11 billion. By the end of March, the total estimated cost for the US had crossed $25 billion. And here's the question no one is asking. How long can this continue before something breaks? Because at this rate, this is not just spending, this is escalation. Israel's finance ministry reported that the war had already cost them $11.5 billion in direct budgetary expenses by mid-April. Iran has claimed losses of nearly $270 billion in direct and indirect damages, including destroyed infrastructure, lost oil revenue, and economic paralysis. But these are only the direct military costs. The real economic damage is much larger. Oil prices spiked dramatically. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil passes, became a war zone. Global shipping costs skyrocketed. Insurance premiums for tankers in the region increased by over 300% in a matter of weeks. The United Nations Development Program estimated that the war could reduce economic growth in Arab nations by between $120 billion and $194 billion in GDP losses. This is not abstract theory. These are real numbers from governments, intelligence agencies, and international organizations tracking the war in real time. But numbers don't fully capture what's happening. Behind every $1 billion, there are real lives being disrupted in ways spreadsheets can't show. $200 billion is an almost unimaginable amount of money. To fully understand the scale of this war, we must look beyond the headline numbers. The $200 billion requested by the Pentagon is only the immediate military spending. Long-term costs include veteran healthcare and disability payments, reconstruction aid interest on the borrowed money, lost economic productivity, increased global defense budgets. Many analysts now estimate the total eventual cost could easily exceed $500 billion. When all indirect effects are included, this war has also accelerated a new arms race in the region. Countries are now pouring more money into missiles, drones, and air defense systems. That spending will continue for years. The $200 billion Iran war is therefore not just a single event. It is the beginning of a new and more expensive era of conflict. To put it in perspective, that amount could fund the entire US education budget for more than a year. It could build over 1 million new homes in the United States. It could pay for universal healthcare coverage for millions of Americans for several years. Instead, that money is being spent on munitions, fighter jet sorties, aircraft carrier deployments, missile defense systems, and rebuilding damaged military assets. Every single day of sustained operations costs the US military hundreds of millions of dollars in fuel, ammunition, maintenance, and personnel. The high daily burn rate comes mainly from expensive precision-guided munitions, air defense interceptors, and the logistical cost of keeping carrier strike groups in the region. And this is only the beginning. Rebuilding damaged infrastructure, long-term veteran care, and interest on the borrowed money will push the final cost much higher in the coming years. But what happened next is where this story stops being regional and becomes global. And this is the part that affects you directly. The war did not stay limited to the Middle East. Within weeks, the effects were felt across the entire planet. Oil prices surged past $150 per barrel at one point. Global inflation spiked again. European countries, already struggling with energy costs, faced another crisis. Asian economies that depend heavily on Middle Eastern oil saw their growth forecasts slashed. Supply chains for everything from electronics to food were disrupted. Shipping companies rerouted vessels around Africa, adding weeks to delivery times and billions in extra costs. Even countries thousands of miles away felt the pain. Farmers in Europe and Asia paid more for fuel to run their machinery. Factories slowed down because of higher energy prices. Ordinary families saw their grocery bills rise sharply. The war became a global economic event, not just a regional conflict. Beyond the dollars, the human cost has been devastating. Imagine waking up one morning and everything you built for years is gone in minutes. Not in a movie, not in history books. In real life, thousands of civilians and soldiers have lost their lives. Entire cities and industrial zones have been damaged or destroyed. Millions of people have been displaced. Let's make this real for a moment. A small factory owner wakes up to the sound of distant explosions. By afternoon, the roads are blocked. By evening, electricity is gone. Within days, His business, built over 15 years, stops completely. No customers, no supply, no income. He is not part of any military strategy. He is not making any political decisions, but his entire life is now on hold because of a war he never chose. This is how economic damage actually spreads, not just through numbers, through millions of silent, personal collapses happening at the same time. Strategically, the war has changed the balance of power in the Middle East in ways that will take years to fully understand. Iran's nuclear program has been set back, but at an enormous price. The region has become more unstable, not less. All sides are now locked in a dangerous game of escalation and retaliation that shows no immediate signs of ending. You might think this has nothing to do with you. No missiles, no war zones, no direct danger. Even if you live thousands of miles away from the conflict, this war is affecting your life right now. Higher fuel prices mean higher transportation costs. Higher transportation costs mean higher prices for almost everything you buy. Governments are borrowing more money to fund military operations, which adds to the global debt burden we already discussed in previous videos. This single conflict is a perfect example of how quickly regional tensions can turn into a global economic crisis. The $200 billion being spent today will be paid by taxpayers tomorrow through higher taxes, inflation, or reduced public services. No one is truly untouched. The real cost of this war will not be known for years. And here's the uncomfortable truth. What we've seen so far might be the cheapest phase of this entire conflict. Now, imagine this continues for another year. Oil prices stay high. Inflation refuses to come down. Governments keep borrowing. Global trade slows further. At that point, this is no longer just a war. It becomes a long-term economic shift, the kind that quietly reshapes how people live, spend, and survive. Rebuilding damaged infrastructure in Iran could take decades and hundreds of billions of dollars. Long-term environmental damage from destroyed oil facilities is still being assessed. The geopolitical fallout will reshape alliances across the Middle East and beyond. Many economists now warn that this conflict could trigger a prolonged period of higher inflation, slower global growth, and increased military spending worldwide. The $200 billion spent so far may eventually look like a down payment on a much larger and longer-term bill. The biggest question is not who wins or loses this war. The biggest question is this: was this war worth the enormous human and financial cost? $200 billion is real money. It represents schools not built, hospitals not funded, infrastructure not improved, and future generations burdened with more debt. History will judge whether the strategic gains justified this massive expenditure. But one thing is already clear. Wars in the modern world are never cheap, and this one is proving to be one of the most expensive in recent history. The $200 billion Iran war is not just a story about missiles and military operations. It is a story about how quickly regional conflict can become a global economic burden. It is a story about the true price of war in the 21st century. It is a story that affects every single person on this planet. Whether they realize it or not, the numbers are staggering, the consequences are real, and the war is still not over. What happens next will determine not only the future of the Middle East, but the economic reality for billions of people around the world. And somewhere tonight, Maybe at 2:47 a.m. again. Another aircraft is already in the sky, and the meter is still running. Thank you for watching. If this video made you think about the real cost of conflict, drop a comment below and tell me your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one.